Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining today. Like we said, this is Indigenous Guardians and IPCAs Part 2. We've got a great session planned for everybody today. Before we get going and introduce ourselves, I'll ask Jimmy to start us off with a land acknowledgement and an opening prayer.
Thank you, Alex. Welcome everybody to IPCA webinar number 2. I just want to acknowledge for myself, the land that I'm on is the Gitxsan territory, Northwest British Columbia. We are located in Gitniao, BC, and we say Lahip for our land. So I want to acknowledge the land that you're on and respect the fact that we all do a very important work, and it's for our very important places. I'd like to say a quick prayer for us to be in a good place. So I'd like to thank the Creator for all of us being able to be here this morning. Thank you to everyone for taking the time to be here with us to discuss this very important topic. And I hope and pray that all of us are able to make very sound decisions and work together for the greater good. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jimmy. I'm still practicing my mute and unmute. Okay, well, just to introduce myself today and where I'm calling in from, my name is Alex. I am the Indigenous Guardians support lead for Nature United, also on the technical support team. I'm calling in from Toronto, the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe, including the Chippewas and Mississaugas of the Credit. My parents were born in Southern Ontario to immigrants coming from Wales, Scotland, and the Netherlands. And I'm very, very grateful to be on this land and also to be hosting this webinar today with some fantastic co-hosts. We have Justine Townsend from the IISAAK OLAM Foundation. She'll be walking through the Knowledge Basket, the IPCA Knowledge Basket, I should say. And I'm also joined by my fellow TST colleagues, Jimmy Morgan, who we just heard from, and Claire Hutton from Nature United. And very, very grateful to have this team co-facilitating, and we'll get to know them better in breakout rooms and in an introduction in a moment. But before that, let's talk a little bit about what we're all here for. So as some of you might know, Indigenous protected and conserved areas are the lands, waters, where Indigenous First Nations, Métis, or Inuit governments have the role in protecting and conserving those ecosystems through Indigenous laws, governance systems, and knowledge systems. The Indigenous Circle of Experts, or ICE, released a report, and the criteria that they outlined were IPCAs are Indigenous-led. They represent a long-term commitment to conservation. They elevate Indigenous rights and responsibilities. IPCAs are increasing in number. With the last 10 years, 90% of protected lands in Canada are Indigenous-led and could be considered IPCAs. With this movement, we also know that we need people to steward those lands and protect them, which is often where guardians come in during the establishment and also the operations of IPCAs, which we'll talk a little bit about today. During the summer, we hosted IPCA's Part 1. We heard some fantastic feedback from the group that people were still interested and that they wanted more resources and also a chance to connect with people who are leading and operating IPCAs. We have such an incredible assortment of people joining us today who are on that leading edge of conservation and protected areas in Canada. If you are part of an IPCA or are establishing an IPCA, if you would like to just share with the group via the chat function and just tell us the name of the IPCA, or if you have a website or social media, it's a great chance to just highlight the fantastic group that we have joining us today and share a little bit about the work that you're doing. While you're doing that, I'll just give you a little overview of the flow of today. We'll start out by giving attendees a chance to connect through a breakout room. There's going to be 4 breakout rooms, and you'll have one of the facilitation team in there with you. During the second half of the webinar, we'll have Justine Townsend, like I said, give you an introduction and walkthrough of the IPCA Knowledge Basket, which is just a stunning resource that brings together some fantastic material from the leading edge of Indigenous protected and conserved areas. From there, we'll have a chance to highlight the latest resource developed by the TST and how it can support Guardians operating or establishing IPCAs. At that time, you'll again have a chance to get a sneak peek at that worksheet, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The purpose of the webinar today is really to connect you with tools and resources that are supporting the boots on the ground operations of IPCAs. These tools don't exist without you. So as the experts of IPCAs and Indigenous programs in Canada, we really want to highlight the ways that you can sort of shape these tools and resources for the people working on similar projects that you are. We'll wrap up around 10:30 or 11:30 Pacific time. And until then, I will just invite Erica to start to open up those breakout rooms. And we do have a prompt that we can start out with. So we're just going to ask you all to introduce yourself in the breakout room, including your name, your nation, community, location, and just tell us a little bit about how your work relates to Guardians and IPCA. So I'll share that to everyone in the meeting.
Great.
And then, yeah.
Alex, what time would you like this breakout to end?
Let's bring us back after 10 minutes, Erica.
Okay, great. Everybody, you'll get a 2-minute warning and you'll be automatically pushed over, but when you get that warning, don't click out. It's just a warning, not the end. All right. Welcome back.
Thanks, everyone. Hopefully people got a chance to meet some folks on the call and learn a little bit about what people are doing in their own respective territories, and yeah, get excited about the work that's being done across, coast to coast to coast. So moving along a little bit, let's introduce our co-host, Justine Townsend from IISAAK OLAM. Justine is the Director of IPCA Partnerships and Knowledge Mobilization at the IISAAK OLAM Foundation. She supports IISAAK OLAM with their mandate to empower the establishment of IPCAs in territories across the country. Justine works with communities, governments, and universities to develop capacity and support Indigenous-led conservation. In her PhD, Justine focused on IPCAs as potential pathways of reconciliation and had the privilege of working with 3 Indigenous communities with IPCAs in British Columbia. So thank you, Justine, so much for joining us today and sharing a little bit about the work that you do and that IISAAK OLAM Foundation does as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. I'm joining you today from beautiful Coast Salish territories, from the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations here in Vancouver. But I work with IISAAK OLAM Foundation, which is an Indigenous-run NGO based in Victoria and West Saanich Territory. And I just dropped the URL to our website in the chat. So IISAAK OLAM is co-founded by Eli Enns, who's from Tulukwiyat Nation and was one of the co-leads on the Indigenous Circle of Experts, which Alex was referencing a bit before, as well as Monica Shore, who's of European ancestry and comes from a background of biosphere reserves and conservation. So the organization really tries to bridge Indigenous and Western ways of knowing and how we approach our mandate, which is to empower Indigenous-led conservation. And we're pretty new. We've been around for about 5 years. We're also a core partner to the Conservation Through Reconciliation Partnership. And I'll just put a link to that website here as well, in case you haven't heard of that group. They're also called the CRP. And so this is a research partnership that brings together Indigenous nations and communities, academic researchers, practitioners who are all working similarly to empower Indigenous-led conservation. There's a number of ways to get involved with the CRP. If you go to the website and look under our work, there's a blog, which is under stories and updates. There are podcasts, there are webinars. And so IISAAK OLAM Foundation is one of the core partners to the CRP, along with the Indigenous Leadership Initiative and the University of Guelph. And that's just, I guess, a way of introducing how we're also involved with this IPCA Knowledge Basket. So the IPCA Knowledge Basket is the resource I wanted to speak with you about today and give you a little demo of the website. And it's a fantastic resource that has had many hands, many minds come together over a long time to work on it. I will just drop that link in the chat as well. And feel free to add any comments or questions too as I'm speaking, and I'll try to answer them as we go. But yeah, anyways, this website is an incredible resource, and I just was invited to share it with you today and orient you a little bit to how to use it and how to find resources that might be helpful in terms of your amazing work as guardians, as well as your work in IPCAs. And I think I will just share my screen now so I can also just kind of give a demo. Okay, hopefully you can see that all right. So when you land on the IPCA Knowledge Basket, it's a web page, but it was designed in a way that's hopefully makes you feel like you're having a bit of a different experience than if you're just visiting a regular website. I won't enable the sound, but there are sounds when you do link to the website here that kind of welcomes you into the space. The first thing you're going to want to do if this is a resource you want to come back to is to create your basket. So right here, if you click on this link, there's a very simple registration process here. And it speaks a little bit to some of the commitments and responsibilities of being in relationship with this resource, I guess you could say, both as someone receiving information, but also potentially contributing to it as well. And then once you do have this, you'll have a login to the website. And so, for example, when I log into my basket, I see stories that I have saved. And so every time I open up my basket, I can see things that I've kind of linked to there, and I can keep building it over time. So I wanted to just show you how that works. So you'll see that when you first land on the home page. But basically what the Knowledge Basket is, it's a kind of a repository, a basket of stories, videos, songs, pieces of writing, artwork. It's always being added to, it's growing. We only launched this in the summer of this past year, so it's pretty new as well. And all the resources center around Indigenous-led conservation. When you enter here, you can hear words of welcome in many different Indigenous languages from across the country. You could also, you're most welcome to, and I invite you to, if you feel called, to contribute a greeting or a thank you message by clicking on this link here. But you know, the concept or the metaphor of the basket is similar to one of weaving. So with this tool or this repository of knowledge, we're trying to braid Indigenous and Western ways of knowing and bring together multiple resources that will hopefully be really helpful. So as further introduction, I'm just going to share this little video with you here, and hopefully the sound comes through. Alex, just flag me if it doesn't sound good, and I will see what I can do. Here we go.
Indigenous people are the guardians for future generations. Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas, or IPCA, is a newer term used to describe activities that Indigenous peoples have been engaged in for millennia, caring for the lands and waters through natural law and Indigenous governance systems. The IPCA Knowledge Basket is a resource originating with the Indigenous Circle of Experts, also known as ICE, and the Pathway to Canada Target 1 initiative. From 2017 to 2018, ICE members led a national effort to consider how IPCAs could be recognized and created in Canada. Their work culminated in the We Rise Together report, which included 28 recommendations. This process revealed that a digital platform could provide Indigenous governments, as well as their partners, with information to help fulfill their IPCA visions. The IPCA Knowledge Basket was created collaboratively with guidance from the National Elders Lodge, former members of ICE, and a diverse range of partners from across what is now referred to as Canada. Basket weaving is a significant cultural practice for many Indigenous peoples. The IPCA Knowledge Basket represents the strength and beauty we can create by weaving multiple knowledge systems together through a two-eyed seeing approach to support Indigenous-led conservation. The website provides pathways for visitors to harvest, collect, and contribute resources to enhance our collective knowledge. It is a space for reciprocal sharing and collaborative learning in the spirit of We Rise Together. The IPCA Knowledge Basket represents hope for the future. It is the continuation of the vision brought forward by Indigenous leaders from generations past. After a 5-year journey and the generous contributions of many, the IPCA Knowledge Basket has found a home. By visiting this space, you too have become a part of the IPCA Knowledge Basket story. Thank you for joining us on this walk.
Okay, hopefully the sound came through okay with that. But that's just a little bit of an introduction to the website, to what it's all about. I wanted to also give a shout out to Design to Plume. It's a woman-owned Indigenous design firm in Ontario, and they are the ones behind the beautiful design of this website. Yeah, so if you continue to scroll down the main landing page, you'll see a collection of resources. These are sort of like some of the newer ones that have been added to the website. But what I wanted to do in the kind of short time that I have now is just give you a bit of an orientation to how you might search for resources that could be useful to you. So if you scroll up to the top here and then click on the menu, you'll see 3 sort of main categories to the website. So there's My Basket, which is what I showed you before, was so when you have a login, you'll see your name and the resources that you've saved there. So it's something you can kind of personalize and build over time. But I wanted to show you next the resources page. So if you click on that, this is kind of like, I guess you could think of it as the library of IPCA related resources. And there are 2 featured resources that you just see when you come to this page right away. This one I just wanted to highlight because I think maybe it's a complementary resource to the one that we'll be talking about a little bit later today. So this is an IPCA creation guide that was created kind of explicitly just to be shared here. You can download it as a PDF or share it as a URL. And it's sort of a visual representation of some of the themes involved in creating IPCAs. This resource was created with input from a lot of folks from Indigenous communities, as well as allied organizations who are also working in supporting Indigenous-led conservation. So it's not meant to be prescriptive, but rather provide a series of prompts as you kind of think through creating an IPCA. So for example, if you click on vision, it will take you here, and then you'll see like a series of prompts kind of around like who should be involved in visioning for an IPCA or who might be involved. There are a number of questions around process, like how will you create the vision? So for example, in your community, what has worked well when engaging community members and leaders? Are there specific community protocols or processes that should be followed? And so on and so forth. There's also kind of a section on values, principles, and laws. And what I wanted to highlight here is that there are a number of resources with hyperlinks here. So you can download various things that might be helpful to illustrate these different aspects of this creation guide. And similarly, if you scroll down, you'll get to one that's about different legal systems that can be used or leveraged to create IPCAs, so both Indigenous laws as well as Canadian laws. And one that might be of interest to this group in particular, sorry for all the scrolling, if that's making you dizzy at all. There's one on operations and stewardship here, and this one includes topics like capacity, guardians, monitoring, and knowledge systems. So I'll let you explore that in more detail later, but I just wanted to orient you a little bit to this creation guide. And so that's, like I said, it was one of the featured resources on the webpage, on the resources section of the basket. But what I also wanted to show you was how to search for things. So this is a bit of like a conglomeration of like a lot of amazing resources here. You might want to click, like if you're working from a community perspective, you could kind of pick on a curated list here that has a number of resources that might be of interest to Indigenous nations, communities, and organizations. There's also a bunch of introductory materials here on IPCAs, like a frequently asked questions guide, the We Rise Together report by the Indigenous Circle of Experts. And then what I also wanted to show you was that this is a good place to search for stuff. So say you're interested in, I don't know, like Indigenous or cultural uses of fire. You could just search for fire here. There's not a lot of resources there, but there are a few. So these are resources on the basket that reference fire. So that's one way of searching there. You can also narrow stuff down by if there's like certain kinds of resources you're looking for, like a video or examples of, of legislation or books. You can kind of click on whichever one you wanted to kind of narrow it down. In this case, there's not a lot of fire examples, so you might not need to do that. But yeah, that's how the search function works if you're looking for a specific resource. And like I said, this is always growing. This is kind of a new collection. So similarly, if you see something that's missing that you know of, the IPCA Knowledge Basket would love to hear about it. And I'll show you where you can suggest a resource in a moment. But going back to the menu here, there's one other component that I wanted to highlight, which is the stories part of the website. So if you click here, it talks about how storytelling is an important way about sharing information, sharing stories. You can contribute a story here. So this is one way you can engage with the knowledge basket. And down here, you can see a few featured stories. These are ones that there was a bit of a deep dive. So there's a lot of information on both of these two stories here, Taloquia Tribal Parks and Thaidene Nene. So if we open, for example, Thaidene Nene, which is in the Northwest Territories, large IPCA established by Lutselk'e Dene First Nation in partnership with the government of the Northwest Territories and Parks Canada. So here you can see just a whole bunch of resources that are about Thaidene Nene, including a webinar recording. There's something here on the Nihatni Dene, I might be pronouncing that wrong, Guardians program. There's some information on how Thaidene Nene Trust Fund works, etc. So, and if you scroll down, you can just see, for example, a lot of information here, a bunch of words that are spoken in Dene. So that's one example of a story. And if I go back here and scroll down, you can see that there are a number of, like, quite a beautiful collection of stories from territories across Turtle Island, Canada. So I just wanted to show you, you can like just browse and pick on things you're interested in, or if there's something you're curious about, like Dasiko Nakwagulan, for example, is an initiative in BC that I had the privilege of working with for my research. And so here, there's just a couple of resources at this moment that are shared here. So there's 2 videos, for example. So that's how you would search a story or a community or initiative or something like that, is just using this search bar there. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. I'm just going to see if there's any questions on the chat that I missed. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to remind you then again, before I ask for your input on something, that there's the landing page when you arrive. This is where you can create your basket so that you can tailor it for when you come back. Once you have a basket created, you can open your basket there, and every single resource you've saved before will show up there. And then I showed you how up here through the menu, you can navigate through 3 sections of the website, resources and stories being the main ones. If you wanted to connect with the basket some more, there's you can suggest resources. So by clicking here, you can share a resource. So in the act of reciprocity, we invite folks who have knowledge about any kind of resource, really. As you can see, there's such a diversity of a collection here that you can fill out this form and contribute something. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to show you. And then in the spirit of reciprocity, if we can just take about a couple minutes or so, I think we still have some time, right, Alex? To do I'm just going to stop sharing for 1 second. I'm going to share with you a Mentimeter poll. And what I would love to do is just hear from you briefly from everyone. If you don't mind opening this link, there's just 2 questions here. And you can also unmute yourself and share right now in the room. But what I would love to hear from in this short amount of time is just what resources, tools, or information are most useful to you in your work as guardians and or as individuals or communities who are establishing or considering establishing IPCAs. So what resources, tools, or information are needed or are missing? What would you love to see on something like the IPCA Knowledge Basket? So that's the first question. You can go to that link in the chat and write your response there, or you can just, if anyone wants to just speak up and share, that would be lovely as well. I'll just give you a few minutes for that.
And as you're sharing your responses, a beautiful graphic is going to show up, everyone, too, of what everybody is looking for in regards to resources, tools, and information, too. So I think Justine will share that with everyone as well, so you can see your responses shared with the group.
Let me just get that lined up. Okay, here are some comments coming in. So it would be good to have guidance regarding creating a budget for IPCAs, a budget template. That's a great idea. I don't know if I've seen one, but if anyone has an example or has one that they could share from their initiative, even if they just took out any information that was confidential, that would be awesome. Project management to help establish training programs, funding opportunities, wildlife studies. Yes, project management help for sure. Ways for people who are working on these to connect, like this webinar. Yes, definitely. And we see another comment here, how to establish Indigenous Guardians in an IPCA as an unrecognized or self-recognized Indigenous nation. Ideas for developing a management plan, definitely useful. Funding, again, certainly an important topic. Awesome. It's great to get some of that feedback, and we'll leave this open. So feel free to continue to add stuff to this poll. And we're also going to send it out as a survey at the end of the workshop, or the webinar. So if you have some ideas that come in later, and you're like, oh, I would love to share that, we would love to hear from you. And I will be passing this on to the IPCA Knowledge Basket development team. And there's really just a fantastic group of committed people who are searching for funding to create these kinds of tools and resources that you're identifying would be helpful. So it is really great to hear what's missing, what's needed, what's working well, what's not. And then the second question, and oh yeah, thanks. There's a few more here on legal information, law information, national and provincial levels, how to work with park staff. and worksheets and walkthroughs and guides. Yeah, these are all really, really great suggestions. Thank you so much. Question about the cost. There's no cost to adding stories. So you can just, it's just, yeah, an offering that you can offer if you feel called, and you just do that through the website. And I think there might be some kind of a process where there's someone on the back end of the website who will reach out to you and contact you and maybe just confirm permissions or any protocols for sharing information. But yeah, there's no cost to do that. I'm just going to stop sharing for 1 second and get to the second question. So the second one, which some of you have already responded to, and I'll just share my screen again, is how would you like to receive these resources, tools, or information? So what method works for you or your community? And this is a word cloud, and it's a little bit hard to see the purple, but there's some great suggestions here. Animated videos. Videos came up a few times. Worksheets, accessible reports, meetings, so bringing people together, a visual summary, step-by-step package. Yeah. What I'm getting from this is just like making sure that resources are accessible, visually appealing and engaging, and also diverse. Like these are quite a diverse array of suggestions, which is awesome. And there's a few more coming in, an online drive, online resources. Yeah, so that's great. Thank you so much for your input. And we'll leave this open, this Mentimeter poll, but as I mentioned, we'll also send it out as a Survey Monkey afterwards, just 2 short questions. So I think I've taken up all my time, Alex. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share this, this resource, the IPCA Knowledge Basket. If you want to stay in touch, I'll put my email in the chat. So feel free to reach out as well, and we can continue to be in communication after this webinar. And similarly, if any other questions come up, you can put those in the chat, and I'll try and respond to them all as well. So thanks so much, and I'll turn it back over to you, Alex.
Thanks so much, Justine. That was such a fantastic walkthrough of the Knowledge Basket. And I know for some of the people who introduced themselves in my group that there's some really, really fantastic tools to sort of outline what are some of those steps and who are doing and sort of leading IPCA work in on Turtle Island and in Canada. I think switching gears a little bit now. So from some of the things that people had shared in the Mentimeter makes this next presentation feel especially relevant. So as we look to how Guardians are stewarding lands and waters in protected areas and beyond protected areas too, the TST wanted to share one of the resources that we're developing to help support that initiative. And again, I'll remind folks to throw questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll make sure that we're sharing these resources, including Justine's contact information for feedback as well. All right, so I'm just going to share my screen here, and hopefully you guys can let me know if you see it okay. Is that the right screen by chance?
We don't see anything.
Just see you.
Just me? Oh, nobody needs to see that. Okay. Let's try this here. Perfect. And we'll just...
We can see it.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. So, like I said in my introduction, I am part of the Indigenous Guardians Technical Support Team. So alongside Jimmy and Claire, we provide technical support to Indigenous Guardians through the Indigenous Guardians Toolkit. And what is the toolkit, you might ask? So we create free online resources that are developed by the technical support team and also by Indigenous guardians and practitioners who are operating programs across the coast, coast to coast to coast. The idea is that we're building that space for people to learn from one another, Indigenous Guardians to learn from one another, to share the resources that they've created, and also to connect with one another through spaces like this. The idea is similar to what Justine showed. So we have stories, practical resources, and support for all programs. The idea of all of the resources that we have in the toolkit is that they're designed to be used, modified, printed out, ripped up, brought into meetings, and shared with one another. So, and by no means are they prescriptive, just a chance to help people start to organize their thoughts and kind of just provide a starting place based on where other Indigenous Guardian programs have started in the past. But again, just really meant for you to tailor it to what works in your context, in your community, with the relevant folks. So with that, let's talk a little bit about our next resource, so Guardians and Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas. It's a worksheet. So the idea, like I mentioned, is that it'll outline the key considerations for guardians and their roles as part of IPCAs. It provides those topics, questions, and also a few resources that connect to other parts of the Indigenous Guardians Toolkit. And it just helps people who are developing, managing, or implementing Guardian programs think through some of the things that might be useful in an IPCA context. Today, we're actually going to be sharing the draft of this resource. And the reason why we're doing the draft is because we really want Indigenous Guardians to help shape this resource and have the people who are working on IPCAs tell us if this is something that's relevant and helpful. Are we missing something kind of confusing? So today, we're really just going to provide you kind of like a sneak peek, that first sort of taste of the resource, and then also give you a chance to provide that feedback and even be a part of a team that reviews this resource. So for today, we're just going to focus on kind of role playing and like walking through this resource as if you were the ones who are bringing it to your community, to your nation, to your Indigenous protected and conserved area, and seeing how it might support guardians doing the work that we know is needed. Okay, so this is just the table of contents of the draft worksheet. So some of the key topics that I mentioned before are guardians' roles establishing an IPCA and then also operating in an IPCA. We also have a section on guardian training in IPCAs and guardians' jurisdictional authority in IPCAs. This document can be adapted to your needs, and it can function as a worksheet that's filled out with ideas, but also as a program template. So using these headings as you're thinking about establishing that Guardian program in an IPCA. You can use the sections that interest you and then work through those prompting questions with your Guardian teams, your leadership, stewardship staff, whoever you think are those key people. And it's designed to kickstart your planning or facilitate a discussion. In some sections, you'll find those topic-specific worksheets to help walk through the details. But in each section, there's also related resources and links to support you as you work through those as well. As we said, draft. So you will have the opportunity to provide feedback through a link that we'll share at the end. And these are the sections here. Today, we're just going to focus on one of the sections here. It's a massive worksheet and it can be a little overwhelming. So in the spirit of just kind of picking and choosing what works for you, we thought it would be a great opportunity to talk about Guardian community outreach and presence. So in this section, this is kind of what the introduction page looks like. So as we mentioned, there's a little bit of an overview. So why are we worried about Guardians roles operating an IPCA? It's because they're a core part of implementation, operation, and monitoring. There's a little bit of a justification to help your thinking, especially if you're bringing it to teams that might need to collaborate on the operation of the IPCA. The other thing that's really helpful is that we have a few resources that will link to different areas of the toolkit, also some external resources. So if you haven't been to the toolkit, say you were interested in engaging community members, and you're like, oh, well, where should I start with that? Or what are some things that have worked for other nations when they were engaging the community? We can take a sneak peek at, or not a sneak peek because it's already up, but a look at what this looks like on the toolkit. So chapter 13, the toolkit has different sections here of why involve your community and communicate about your Guardian program. Maybe the timing. So is it too soon to involve community? Is it too late? It's never too late, but here's some ideas of when might be helpful to start talking to people. There's different resources that we talked about. So there are tip sheets, there's templates. We'll be sure to include a sample budget of what a Guardian program operates with. We'll share that in the follow-up, I should say, but it's in the toolkit. There's also different worksheets that you can download that are specific to the different operations of Guardian programs. So all of these can be applied in the context of IPCAs or outside IPCAs as you're still establishing your Guardian program. For the worksheet today, so we're really excited to get you guys back into those breakout rooms. We want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your Guardian program or just hear from other people who have a Guardian program and are either operating in an IPCA or thinking about operating in an IPCA. So today, like I said, we're going to focus on Guardian community outreach and presence. And this is what the worksheet prompts will look like. So as you can see, it's pretty broad questions with some lines that help you just sort of jot down your thinking and who you bring to the table to help you answer these questions is totally up to you. For today, we'll be working in our groups. That was a little bit of like a role-playing exercise. So some of the questions that we're going to bring up today are, how and when do your Guardians interact with community members, residents, or visitors? And how would you like Guardians to interact with these groups? So as you can imagine, if you have an IPCA that you're currently involved with, you can think about how Guardians are in that space and who visits that space, or how is your nation establishing their presence on the territory, and how our Guardians are reestablishing or coming into the IPCA again, and how our Guardians supporting that. We'll also talk a little bit about how our community members and visitors made aware of who Guardians are and what they do. And lastly, how will Guardians encourage community presence in the IPCA? No need to write these down. We'll make sure to share them in the breakout or in the main area before we enter those breakout rooms. So I'll pause stopping my screen. I see there was a few questions in the chat, and that looks like people are good to go. I'm just going to throw in those questions that I just mentioned so that we can all review them before we jump into the breakout rooms. You will have a facilitator in there with you that also has a copy of these questions too. So again, not to worry there. Before we break in those rooms, does anybody have any quick questions? And now is not the last chance too. We'll make sure that there's an opportunity to ask those questions and provide that feedback at the end. Until then, Erica, I think I'm going to ask you to open up those breakout rooms again, and let's maybe take it until 11:25. So that way we'll have 25 minutes in the same breakout room with your original group.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and do that right now. And just as another reminder, I'll give you a 2-minute warning so you don't have to leave when you get that.
Thanks, Erica. Hi, everyone. I hope everybody got a good chance to get some discussion going on some of those prompts. I know they're big questions. It's only 25 minutes, so I commend you guys on the spirit of giving it the old college try and going over the draft resource for the latest worksheet on the Indigenous Guardians Toolkit. This is sort of our final wrap up of our time together today. So we wanted to thank all of the attendees for their time and for their thoughts and for participating in a good way. I also wanted to thank Justine for that fantastic presentation on the IPCA Knowledge Basket, and for also giving people the opportunity to shape that resource and being able to do that in a really collaborative way. So thank you, Justine. As we mentioned before, Justine will be sharing the Survey Monkey. So that's an opportunity for you, once you've checked out the Knowledge Basket, to provide some of your thoughts and reflections and see how you want to shape that resource. We also have the opportunity to do that through the Knowledge Basket as well, through that engage section that Justine shared. I also wanted to give people the chance to follow up with the technical support team. So you got kind of just like a tiny little appetizer of the worksheet that's available. So we'll give you a chance through this link here to give some of your reflections or tell us if you want to be a part of the review of this new resource. And if you're passionate about Guardians and IPCAs and you want to be a part of supporting other Guardians in their protected and conserved areas, you have the chance to do that by letting us know in that link that I just dropped in the chat there. As always, you can get a hold of the technical support team and book a one-on-one session with Jimmy, myself, and Claire. Those are available through the toolkit, and it's a great chance to talk through an opportunity or a sticking point and see from the perspective of the TST what resources could be helpful, and just have a chance to talk through that. If you enjoyed this discussion today and you want to be a part of more, we'll be hosting the next webinar around wildlife camera monitoring, where we'll have two folks from the University of Guelph who have developed a guide, as well as a nation who's implemented a Guardian program and provides them with their reflections. So I'll throw that registration in here. And then to close out in a good way, I'm going to ask Jimmy if you could provide a closing prayer, ask the crowd if they would like to.
Thank you, Alex. And yes, very important discussions. I think we got through 2 questions out of all of those, but everything that was said was very important. And again, thanks to everyone that showed up. It is recorded, so come back and watch it anytime you need to. Same with the first one. So yes, I just want to say a quick prayer and thank you to everybody that showed up today. I want to thank the Creator for giving us the opportunity to sit together and be together. Networking is a very important part of our work. If we can't learn from each other, then who are we going to learn from? We are all teachers, guardians, and monitors. I do believe we were born that way, so let's use that to our advantage. again, thank you to the creator for giving us this opportunity, and hope to see you guys again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. And yeah, everyone, if you have any questions, you can reach out to the TST. We're here to connect through our one-on-ones, and also our emails are always open. So feel free to shoot us any comments or questions. And until then, thank you, and have a great rest of your week and the holiday season as it approaches.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
So everyone. Alex, do you want to just pop the Facebook link in the group too, just in case folks aren't on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
For those of you guys, for those of you guys who aren't already, there's a kind of closed Facebook group specifically for guardians and folks working in service of guardian programs. And so that's a place where also we share information and connect with each other. So if that's of interest, you can join that group. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining today. Hope that was a fruitful discussion for folks, and thank you.